common sense recap of the day's biggest stories. It's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC. Breaking news, WABC.
And we go now to our Gov on the scene in Chicago. The great former New York Governor David Paterson, who is now there for the Democratic National Convention. Gov, we're so happy to have you call in. I know you just got there. Give us sort of a preview of what's to come and your thoughts of landing there and what everyone's looking forward to next week. It's going to be a huge week for them.
Well, it's starting, there are people who've shown up early and are, anticipating, what's going to go on at the convention. It's pretty quiet. But what I'd have to say is there is a palpable sentiment that's blowing in the wind, and it has to do with these protesters who would do anything to try to make names for themselves or to humiliate the Democratic Party. And, and I think right now, really, as Americans, it's kind of like what the Prime Minister of Israel said when he was here, which is that it's not Israel versus Hamas, it's good versus evil. And in this case, I think it's not Republicans versus Democrats, it's good versus evil. In other words, whoever wins the election and after you count the ballots is one thing, but what we're seeing is some kind of activity that almost claimed the life of the leader of one of our parties and threatens the convention of the other party. And I think it's pretty outrageous. And I think that the mayor of Chicago did the right thing. He expanded the perimeters of where the convention will be at the United Center so that the protesters can't get close and disrupt the events. And apparently they're mad at him. Good. They should stay mad at him. He should widen it even more.
Absolutely. Governor David Paterson, I was at the Republican National Convention. Ed, of course, was there too. And there was such massive security because it came, soon after the assassination attempt of Trump. How massive do you feel like the security is there? Because, of course, the stakes couldn't be higher. And you think we were just talking about the open border earlier. There's so much concern of these, the protesters, the Antifas and the pro-Hamas protesters, but also there's a lot of, foreign cells and potential for that, too.
And I think that that's what we've got to do in terms of finding out who these protesters are, where they get the huge amounts of money that it takes to bring in, porta potties and all these other things that they do, where they're almost, in a sense, setting up an office right around where the convention center would be. And it's very dangerous. It's really something that I don't think it would be too bad if a congressional committee was formed to investigate it, because I don't get the impression that people who just, happen to have sympathy for Hamas or whoever it is, it's much more difficult what they have been able to accomplish, and where and who is making this happen, I think, needs to be exposed.
Absolutely. We're talking to Governor Paterson, who is there in Chicago with the DNC starting on Monday. Ed Cox, you got a question?
Governor, you brought up an interesting point. Johnson is not Mayor Daley of 68. I'm sure he has some sympathy with the people who are outside are going to be protesting. How do you think that plays out over the 4 days of the convention?
Well, I think what he's doing, Ed, is what you've seen some other leaders do. They don't wait for the crisis. They plan for it. And so he's got areas cordoned off already, and they're watching people going in and out of there because, they go in and then it's 2 or 3 of them. Then next thing you know, it's 250 of them and it gets out of control. So I think he was totally right to do it. And I think he was also totally right to publicize that he was doing it, so the people who live in Chicago feel safe, and the people who are watching the convention from all around the country don't have to see a terrible incident that I'm sure many of these protesters wouldn't mind staging.
Yeah, let's pray that everybody is safe. Keep us posted, please, Gov, and I hope you can join us on Monday, too. It'd be great to have you.
Well, absolutely. I'll talk to you all soon. Everybody have a good weekend.
Oh, thank you so much. Governor David Paterson there at the Democratic National Convention gearing up in Chicago. And let's pray everybody again is safe. We're so great to have him. How wonderful.